404. In the inner layers of the multiverse error. Sans was sitting around minding his bussiness as he watched us from afar, showing little interest in them as usual. With Ink having his new friends and toys around, this place has become too cute. Especially with that new dream kid running around spreading all this positivity and shit. Same for his annoying brother Nightmare. Wouldn't be a pain if he wasn't always nagging for me to join his stupid club or whatever. Error said as he played with his strings. Error then looked over and saw Ink, Dream and another version of Blueberry Sans. They all looked to be doing some weird team meeting thing or whatever it was. Error paid it no mind. He had destroyed 10 AUS today and didn't have to deal with Ink too much thanks to that new organization known as the Bad Sanses going around and causing havoc. It gave Error a chance to relax and no longer worry on what was happening around him, at least until Ink came around. Hey best buddy. Ink smiled. Oh Jesus kill me, Error said as he turned in his makeshift hammock looking away. He could hear Ink drinking another vial to change his emotions. Error always knew everyone looked at him like a freak and a weirdo, but why did they never question the only one without a soul or who couldn't feel any emotion? He asked himself that question a lot. So the silent treatment, who? That's okay. Just want you to know that if you stick your nose in any US again, I still owe you 2 broken legs for before Saya. Ink waved as he ran back to his friends. Error looked back and watched them disappear, and just as that happened, Error got out of his hammock and then made his way to the Doodle Sphere, and as he got there he noticed all the US all timing with life and sparks of energy. He then used his strings and grabbed one. It was Swapfell. What a waste of space. The probability under 4% shouldn't exist, and yet here it is, taking up all this space with the rest of the filth here. Hell well, not for long, Error said as he then grabbed it and ripped it to shreds, enciphering its core code for himself. Error then began to laugh and chuckle to himself as he kept tearing apart us until suddenly he got hit with a large thing of paint. Oh shit, Error said under his breath as he looked up to see a pissed Ink. Now I owe you 5 broken ribs, Glitchy. Ink smiled as he then ran towards Error with his brush. Try and catch me, Squid. Error shouted as he teleported away, only for Ink to already be there. What the? Error shouted as he back up. Come on, Glitchy, we've done this song and dance before. I know exactly where you're gonna teleport to next. There is no point in running, Ink smirked as he looked at Error with cold red eyes. We'll see about that, shithead. Error said as he teleported to Underswap, only for Ink to be sitting on a nearby tree waiting for him. This place again? Ink smirked. Son of Dash, Error muttered as he teleported away again and again and again and again. Ink was always there waiting for him. There was no way for him to get away. Until finally Error felt an unfamiliar presence and took the opportunity to teleport there. And as soon as he got there he found himself in a dark black abyss. What the hell is this place? Error thought to himself as he kept walking. As he did, each step sent out a ripple effect all over the place. The amount of code Error felt in this place was overwhelming. Not only that, but the voices of the anti-void he used to hear were 10x worse in this place, to the point Error had to stop walking completely and block them out to focus on walking. Is this hell or something? Error said with a echo. No worse, said a voice near him, in which Error jumped backwards in shock and slight fear, only to see another Sans on his knees in the black abyss. Who are you? Error asked. Who am I? I once had a real name. Don't remember it all too well anymore, said the skeleton as it looked up at Error. Who are you? It asked. I'm Error, the god of destruction, Error said with a wide smile. Error who? That's a nice name, maybe I'll use that instead, said the figure as it got up, revealing its face to be similar to Error's, except whatever string-like things on his face weren't strings but scars. What?
Hell no.
I don't do well with that kind of OC bullshit crap, Error said as he used his string to wrap around the figure. Now are you ready to admit surrender? Or shall I kill you instead? Error said with a smile. I could use him to help me get out of this weird-ass place, Error thought to himself before he saw the skeleton begin to squirm. J. Jacob? How could you? How could you do this to him? The skeleton screamed out as it then broken through the strings with ease and ran to Error, getting ready to grab him. Wait, stop! Error shouted, but it was too late. The skeleton grabbed a hold on him. The moment contact was made between the two, the multiverse immediately shut down and restarted itself, spawning Error and the other skeleton outside of the weird black abyss and in the anti-void. What the hell just happened? I felt like I died and then just dash, but before Error could finish he was lifted up into the air by the pale skeleton and smashed onto the ground head first, causing excruciating pain. He was then lifted up again, and the process repeated 12 times before Error was left dangling suspended in the air. This is curious. All this new life and new faces I can sense everywhere. And yet my home is nowhere to be found. I'll have to start anew then, but first let's start with getting everything situated, said the pale skeleton as it walked over to Error, whose skull was nearly close to cracking and had divots in some places. Tell me something, Error, do you work for anyone? The skeleton asked. And no, Error said weakly. How is he so damn strong? Error thought to himself as blood dripped down his skull. Excellent then, since you seem to have a good idea of how this place works from what I'm guessing, and I could use someone to show me the ropes, I'll recruit you under my wing. If you refuse though, I'll kill you on the spot. Jotit? The pale skeleton said in a cold tone. Error looked at him with a look of anger, but he knew what was the result if he refused, so reluctantly agreed. Good, now then you will now follow my orders and do as I say. Oh, and you can call me Error 404 from now on, 404 said as he smirked, teleporting him and Error away. A_new_target. After a month of being around each other, 404 and Error began to grow accustomed to each other. While it was easy for 404, it wasn't all that great for Error on the other hand. Error had difficulties with trying to mesh his normal lifestyle with 404's. 404 was more of control freak than even Error was, with his constant schedule changes and rewrites. Not to mention the fact now he was getting way stronger than he was the first time they met. Error was getting furious, but also was curious. This Error didn't seem like anything new, but instead felt old and like a veteran to the whole thing, even though he didn't know shit on the multiverse like at all. Error had to teach him everything there was to know about the multiverse, all the people in AUS that existed and who governed around the place. He told him of the doodle sphere and the anti-void. 404 was fascinated with it all, but the real highlights of everything was when Error got to learn something new. 404 would talk about the secret place he was in, and how it was called the mainframe. It was supposedly a place where pure code ran and everything was in order and was perfect all around, until he didn't get to hear how 404 got there, just how he learned of the place. Alright boy, let's begin with a lesson on blue magic, shall we? 404 said with a strict and firm tone as he stood far away. I already know how to use blue magic, old man. And I thought I told you to stop with the damn nicknames. I'm not a fucking child. Error shouted, glitching out much to 404's displeasure. You'll never beat that. Ink was his name, right? Yes, Ink. You'll never beat Ink with that attitude. The best you'll end up doing is getting your ass handed to you, like how you mentioned before. 404 chuckled to himself. Shut up. Error shouted as he then fired his blasters at 404, only for him to dodge them and shoot him with the first shot of the God Ray, paralyzing him. That's strike one. Never attack your master otherwise, unless you want to end up like how I found you. Let this be a lesson to you, 404 said as he lifted up Error and smashed his head into the hard ground of the anti-void, giving him a concussion and knocking him out cold. Lessons were rough. Ever since 404 took Error under his wing, the lessons he had to learn were excruciating to say the least. Things such as becoming one with your emotions and learning how to sense magic in objects without a soul were by the worst pain in the ass for Error. And some days he wished that 404 would have just killed him when they first met. 404 was constantly disciplining Error for his lack of patience and his quickness to action and violence when there are clear methods to end a battle with tiring oneself. Other days 404 and Error would go out and cipher the energy and code from AUS. Error taught 404 how to do it at first, but after that 404 was already way ahead of him, showing feats such as being able to destroy AUS in mere seconds, and just being able to annihilate smaller ones just by standing in them. Other days 404 was planning stuff and coming up with new techniques or perfecting the ones he already had. Hey old man, Error said as he walked up to 404. What is it now? 404 asked as he was working on a holographic panel. How come you wanted to learn everything that I knew and yet didn't ask about wanting strings? Error asked. 404 looked towards Error, and then towards all makeshift stuff he'd made on his free time with his strings. Just seems insufficient, plus too girly, 404 answered, which in turn made Error beating red with anger. But instead of shouting, Error simply teleported away back to the doodle sphere where he saw Ink and the rest of his friends with him. Ink looked at Error with cunning side eye as Error gave him the same. Error never told Ink about 404 for it wasn't his business. But yet again at the same, it was nice to have something of his own for once, seeing how Ink always had people around him. It was kinda Nice to have someone who didn't hate Error, or at least not completely. Error and 404 destroyed a lot of AUS whenever they could, but they never completely got rid of them, but instead took their code away and put into a stockpile that 404 stashed in order to use for something else. Error, I think now's a good time to let you know what I want to do with all those code fragments we've been gathering up from those worlds we destroyed, 404 said as Error simply looked at him as he sat on his blaster. I used to live in a AU called Alphatale. Recalling these memories are rough to say the least. It wasn't perfect, but it was my home and everything about it was pristine and well. It was homey, I suppose. Tragedy struck one day and we had someone destroy everything we love and care about there. My brother, mother, Seachar. 404 chalked on his words. This didn't faze Error. He had heard stories like this from countless AUS before. But somehow something did begin to pull at his soul. I need these fragments to rebuild my world, and I believe with your help I can do this. 404 said. And what if I refuse? Error said with an aggressive tone. You would refuse? 404 said. Of course I refuse. Error said as he got down and walked away a couple feet. Don't think you can drag me into your reconstruction plan, after doing what you've done to me so far. It pisses me off. We settle this with our fist. If I win I get to put a hole in your head as big as my blaster. Error said with a malice and aggressive tone. And what do I get if I win? 404 asked. This. You can get me to do whatever you want. Hell, I'll even dance for you, old geezer. Error said with an evil grin, with 404 returning the favor with his own. Error then fired his blasters at 404, but yet again to no avail as 404 dodged out of the way, and fired his God Ray only for Error to use his bones to block it. But the God Ray went right through it and hit Error, paralyzing him yet again. Why you gotta be fucking kidding me? Error stuttered as he watched 404 walk past him and lift him up with blue mastery only to slam him down onto his back with a loud crack and thud. You'll never get anywhere without me, you know. I can make you into the greatest destroyer this multiverse will. But deny me Error and well, I might just have to go and take the opinion of some with a more colorful choice of words, so to say, 404 said as he looked down at Error, who was struggling to get up. Join me completely, Error, and I can make you into something fierce and a true god to boot. Or would you rather go back to being chased around by a squid with a pencil? 404 said as he looked at Error. Error hated situations like these, but couldn't deny the deal utterly otherwise. He'd probably be disposed of. Fine then, but you better hope that whatever you teach me is good, Error said with annoyance in his voice. That's not up to me, boy, 404 said as he and Error began to walk off towards another part of the multiverse. Now come along, we have another member we need to get before the day is over, 404 said as he teleported the two of them away. Just a thought. 404 and Error soon arrived in the Thought O around the exact moment where Seraphim was about to make the decision to decide the fate of his world. Seraphim looked back at the two skeletons, curious on what was going on. Who are you two? Said Seraphim with caution. 404 stared at Seraphim, sensing his immense power and overwhelming strength. Boss, you sure about this? Nobody ever messes with this guy, he's a god, untouchable. Error whispered to him, only for 404 to smirk and walk forward. I'm here to give you a choice, my friend, 404 said. Well, I have enough choices already, now be gone. You're ruining my focus, Seraphim replied as he turned around again, much to 404's disliking. Told you this was going to be a waste of time, Error said, crossing his arms in annoyance. Quiet boy now, my friend. I'm sure there's a way I can help you. Perhaps I could give you and this world a happy ending. 404 said, shocking not only Seraphim but Error as well. What? Error and Seraphim shouted in unison. Error then used his strings and pulled 404 to the side. That wasn't part of the deal. I said I'd help you fix your own end of story. I'm not a charity guy, okay? Do I look like that damn squid to you, who? Error silently shouted at him. Listen here, boy. I spared your life and brought you here with me so we could work together. Not so I could get a front row seat to you and your damn meddling and constant bitching. Now if you want to keep being a child, then I suggest leaving this place so the adults can talk. 404 said to Error, getting in his face and then walking to Seraphim. Error looked down at the ground, his fist balled up. He still lacked any knowledge of how things like this worked. All he did know was that he was definitely not helping any AUS that could cause him trouble along his goal to become the top destroyer. Error watched as 404 and Seraphim conversed for a bit before he tuned himself out and looked the other way. He never had been a lackey for anyone, so he found standing around to be a tedious task, but one that was not unwelcome. Don't trust these guys, Sans, they could be dangerous, remember last time with wingdings? Said Chara inside of Seraphim's head. Seraphim looked down at 404 in caution as he didn't know to trust the individual or to shut him away. Now that they know where are, they'll never let us go. Enough of this, I'm taking over, said Chara as Seraphim's eyes turned a hot red as he stared down at 404 in error. I have a better idea for you two trash bags, Seraphim said as suddenly his tail came from behind him and wrapped around Error, slamming him to the ground before throwing him to the far expansions of the void they were in. 404 looked over in the back to Seraphim only to get kicked away by the large beast, sending him flying backwards. You're a lot stronger than I gave you credit for. Alright then, how about we do this then? 404 said as he stood up and looked to Seraphim, who drew their large knife-like blade, and began to swing at 404, who dodged all of their attacks swiftly and with a sense of grace. Seraphim then got his tail and began to use that alongside his original knife attacks he was going for. 404 then stopped running as he then caught Seraphim's blade in two of fingers when he swung at him. Seraphim looked in complete shock as he then was lifted up by 404 and tossed to the side. Not all that impressed, sorry, 404 said as he looked to Seraphim, who was still getting up. Seraphim looked at him completely dumbfounded. How in the hell did you? Seraphim stuttered as 404 then used blue mastery, lifting him up and throwing him down to the ground with a large boom. Gonna have to try harder if you want a chance against me, 404 said as he then flew into the air, dodging shots from Seraphim's yellow pistol. In the distance, Error would get up, shaking off any dizziness as he then saw 404 and Seraphim going at it. It was impressive to watch and even more impressive to be there in person to see it. The old man was fighting against this godlike being like it just another enemy. Just what the hell are you? Error said to himself as he got on his blaster and began to fly back over towards the battle. 404 continued to dodge every attack from Seraphim until a random tail attack from the big guy came into view, cutting 404's arm clean off. Seraphim smiled as he finally got a hit in, and Error's face twisted with shock and unsure happiness at the sight. Shit, I was carless, 404 said to himself as he landed a few feet away. He looked at his wound, unsure how he was going to proceed with his plans with just one arm, until suddenly his arm just respawned itself back onto his body like nothing had happened. Everyone looked in complete shock at the sight, as they never would have guessed it was possible. 404 then looked down a message on his interface saying back to full HP. And then disappearing. Could this be the mainframe's doing? Well, whatever it was, it's given me a second chance and I can't waste it, 404 said as he stood in front of Seraphim, and then with a burst of magic powered up for only a couple of minutes before stopping completely. This fight is over, 404 said. Seraphim looked on in complete shock and surprise as he was unsure of what he could possibly do to fend off this godlike being. Seraphim, for all of his time in his O, was told to have the powers of a god and be unstoppable, but he was sure now and certain that was standing before him now was a true god. A new puppet, Seraphim edition. The battle between Thought, Sans, Chara, and 404 raged on for quite a while. With Thought's ever-pushing tactics and 404's quick dodges and parries, it soon became clear that this fight coming to a quick end sooner than later. Thanks to an unlikely party member. 404. Well, you certainly do play the part, dodges a bullet and a blast, but you can't honestly believe you have any chance, seeing as how you haven't even hit me directly yet, and you're God supposedly. Thought, Sans, Chara, stand still and you'll find out, you quick shit. Thought, Sans, Chara uses their tail to wrap around 404 and slam him to the ground, pinning him down. Thought, Sans, Chara, now eat dust. But just as the blade was about to reach 404's head, Thought's body began to slow down slowly until it came to a complete halt. Thought, Sans, Chara, what is this? And my body, I can't move. 404. Say hello to Blue Mastery, the most potent and profound version of the blue attack. With it I can not only freeze souls, but even things that don't have a soul either. 404 wiggled his way out of the grip of the tail, and soon lifted up Thought. Sans, Chara. 404. Now then, let's take you for a spin. 404 began to throw and slam Thought against the floor harder and harder each time he pressed them down. Error. Sans, apologies for that back there. Error was back, A bit shaken, but alright, I should have seen that coming, damn it. 404. Don't worry, I counted on it. Error sans you what? Error got in 404's face. 404. Move out of the way, boy, you're blocking the show. Error sans. I don't give a damn about your show. You're saying you wanted me to get slammed with that damn blade? Who? 404. No, but it was a possibility I saw coming and I merely took the opportunity when I saw. But you can be quite unreliable at times if you were hoping I would say that, 404 said with a shit-eating grin. Error, sans. What the? I'm gonna fucking kill you. Asterisk, but just before Error could get a hit in 404 through thought. Sans down one last time, shaking the ground. Error turned around to see him lying face down in the ground. Asterisk. Error, sans. So you're actually gonna take this one? 404. He's a necessity. Without him I won't be able to go anywhere with those protectors and wannabe pacifists going down my throat. Now then, tie him up. Error sans, my strings won't hold. 404. Don't worry, boy, I did you the liberty of modifying them before we got here. Error sans what? How did you? 404 just. Do what I tell you for once without question. Is that too much to ask, boy? Error looked at 404 pissed yet again and reluctantly stringed up thought. Sans Chara. But the strings were able to hold him down with no trouble at all, and against thought's struggling Oswell. Error. Sans. Wow, these feel better than my regular strings. What exactly did? 404. And that, boy, is the power of knowledge and mainframe coding, 404 said while walking to the restrained thought. Sans. Error. Sans. What the hell is the mainframe? 404. I'll tell you when you're older. Error sans. I'll tell you when you're older. Entitled prick. Whatever. 404 stopped in front of thought. Sans Chara. Getting ready to mind warp him. 404. Any last words or boring monologues you want to tell me? Thought sans Chara. Go to hell, you damn dirty hacker. 404. Fair enough. 404 then used mind warp on thought. Sans taking over not only his code, but his mind. Oswell turning thought. Sans into his puppet as Error. Sans watched in awe. 404. Alright, that should do it. Error sans. Is it done? 404. Yep, you can let him go. Error let his strings go and watched as thought. Sans bowed before 404. Thought. Sans controlled. What is your bidding, my master? 404. Head back to HQ. I've installed the data and location along with your first 2 missions in your code once you get there. Oh, and also, if you don't mind, clean up well when you're done. We don't want the whole multiverse knowing of our presence. Thought. Sans controlled as you command, my master. Thought. Sans then teleported away. Error sans. Holy shit. You actually got him, wow. 404. And that sounds like a reaction of doubt. Error. Sans. I mean, it's not every day you see a god fall and bow to another. So ya call me shocked. 404. Well, you have enough time to do that later. Our next target is going to be a lot more of nightmare to handle. Error. Sans. I thought you didn't do jokes? He said as he walked next to 404. 404. I just like giving away breadcrumbs. Error sans 4? 404. Would you shut up and get close? This next location isn't exactly close by. Error sans right. And thus 404 and Error embarked on their next venture. Hard pickings. 404 and Error arrived at Dreamtale on a far-off part of the far away from anyone else. So then what now? Error asked impatiently. Now we use our new toy 404 then brought a screen and pressed a few buttons and cause a distraction and you'll hold off Dream while I get some resources for 104 said as he teleported away. Great. And just when am I supposed to know when this distraction gets here? Error said crossing his arms. But suddenly the ground began to shake violently. Error turned his head towards the noise and saw a corrupted Seraphim. Sans running towards the Dreamtale town where the mystical tree was and start causing havoc. Guess that's it, Error said shockingly as he teleported closer to the action and as everyone ran away and as Dream got ready to defend his home 404 began to steal apples from the mystical tree that Dreamtale was famous for. Error then looked towards Sperhim only to see one his hand swat at him and send him flying into a nearby crowd of people. Ah, son of a bitch, Error said as he looked up and saw Seraphim resisting 404's mind control. 404 turned around and stared at Seraphim resisting. I won't, Seraphim said as he banged his head against the hard ground. Impressive resistance, but put 10% of my power into you should help even the odds in my favor, 404 said as he wrapped Seraphim in blue mastery. 404 began to sweat a lot and some of his bones cracked Oswell, but in the end Seraphim's eyes returned to a cold blue color. Well, now that's taking care of. 404 held his left arm in pain. Let's get back to Dash. But before 404 could finish, he was quickly interrupted by Chain heading his way, which he dodged. He then looked up towards its point of origin and saw Abyss, Sans Swap, Sans and a few other goodies that were in the sky. Great, Error said, pain in my ass. 404 said to himself, looking up at them. Enough games now, demon, time to surrender or you cannot and make this a whole lot more fun. Abyss said, smiling. Guess you're having fun then, kiddos. 404 said sarcastically, only for Abyss to shoot out hundreds of spear chains 404's way. 404 dodged and knocked some out the way, but ended up getting pinned to the tree by the rest of them. Abyss then flew to 404 and put a sharp bone to his neck. For been tracking you and that little lackey of yours for months, and now I can finally put you where you belong, Abyss said angrily. I hope it's in the ground, cause the longer you talk the more I wanna die. 404 chuckled, swap mecha. Go and make sure there are no more baddies around and have Ink get here and help us deal with Seraphim. Abyss said, holding 404. Oh sorry bud, can't let you do that, said a voice from behind Abyss, in which he looked to see 404 standing on a blaster in the distance. Confused Abyss looked at the 404 he had pinned and saw that they both looked alike. Sorry bud, but I think I'm done cosplaying, said the other 404 as he pushed Abyss back with sheer force and sent him flying backwards. The other 404 soon began to change shape and appearance until he looked like Bill Sans. Abyss looked in shock as Bill Sans stood in front of him smiling. What's wrong buddy, you look a little rattled, Bill Sans said, in which Abyss was lifted up by Blue Mastery and thrown to the side only to be tied up by Error in the process. What do you think of my 404 impression?
Bill, sans asked.
Pretty good, but it could use less jokes, 404 said as he walked next to Bill Sans. Bad apple. 404 then turned his head to Abyss and saw him looking at him in anger, only for him to then be grabbed by the controlled Seraphim Sans. As he struggled, 404 then floated towards him. You see what happens when you get in my way, Abyss, you get hurt and then no one is happy, 404 said as he then went and picked apple from the dream tree, turning it into a dark blue and then a vantage black. What are planning, monster? Abyss shouted as he struggled against Seraphim's grip, only for Error to come over and knock him out with a single punch to the jaws. Silence, anomaly, Error said with annoyance. Wow, Error, that almost sounded defensive. Getting soft? 404 said sarcastically. Don't offend me, Error said, walking beside Bill. Sup glitches, Bill said, tipping his hat and bowing much to Error's displeasure. 404 then finished messing with the apple and tossed it to Error, who fumbled with it for a butt before catching it completely. The hell you giving me this for? Error said, so you can eat it. What the hell do you think I gave it to you for? Give it go, Nightmare, 404 said as he turned away from Error, checking another mark on his holographic screen. Hey, I said I didn't want to do any more errand boy work, Error complained. And last I said I didn't give a shit. Now go and give it to Nightmare and don't come back until your apple is, 404 said as he finished his list. Error then left in silence, leaving the other four there with the other inhabitants of Dreamtale still running away from the chaos. So any more deals need doing? Or is that me? Bill said, floating towards 404. Get out of here, Bill, I have no use for a silly god. 404 said as he kept focused on his work. Oh, we blue jeans, your words hit me like a truck. How will I ever live with myself? Oh, Bill said as he faded away. 404 then looked around and then to Seraphim. Get rid of him, Seraphim, we're leaving, 404 said as he got ready to leave. Seraphim threw Abyss down at the ground, burying him in dirt. He then walked next to 404, who then teleported them both back to their headquarters. 404 began walking to the bridge and Seraphim dangled his legs over the cliffside as 404 messed around with buttons. As he went through them, he heard someone call out to him. William, said a voice, causing 404 to turn around in shock. But no one was. Oops. This image does not follow our content guidelines. To continue publishing, please remove it or upload a different image. 404 began walking to the bridge and Seraphim dangled his legs over the cliffside as 404 messed around with buttons. As he went through them, he heard someone call out to him. William, said a voice, causing 404 to turn around in shock. But no one was there behind him. He looked away, tired and exhausted, still trying to keep himself up. He then opened a portal to the doodle sphere. He peeked his head through and saw Ink drawing. 404 looked around at all the scatread drawings looking for which one would make good for his collection. As he looked through he saw Dream run to Ink and began talking with him, no doubt due to the earlier events, but Ink left with Dream, in which 404 then jumped through to the doodle sphere and looked around. He then began to grab a few drawings some Ink wouldn't notice and some 404 especially liked. 404 then looked to the doodle sphere and at the US around him. What a ugly dung heap this is, 404 said as he then used his blue mastery to pull down a stray O from its place. He held it in his hands for a moment before ripping the O in two. It's just that easy, 404 said as he then returned back to HQ. Big plans and little moments. 404 then returned and saw Error there waiting for him. Welcome back. How'd it go? 404 said, walking to the bridge. It went well, but sir, just tell me something, Error said, following him. Error, you know how much I hate your questions, 404 said, opening up his holographic list. Yes, you've made it perfectly aware, but I need to ask you something. What happens when we're found out? Error said, causing 404 to stop in his tracks. Error looked a little worried, like as if he had pushed a button either way, though he continued. I mean, you have all these plans, but did you even bother to think about what may happen if anyone was to find out about this? Error said, in which 404 looked down with a bit of worry before an idea ran across his head and he began to laugh. It wasn't a sinister laugh, and yet it creeped Error out none the lesser. Oh Error, how you pessimism leads to greatness. It's incredible what the brain can think of under tight circumstances such as these, 404 said, closing his list. Error still didn't know what was going, for even now he was still left in the dark. 404 looked to Error. Come, I think it's time for some more training, 404 said, walking past Error and to a clearing. But sir, I already feel like I've learned enough from you, Error said, annoyed. You can learn anything, Error, but it's a whole other level to master said skills. Now then, shall we practice blue mastery again, 404 said, in which Error signed and got his hands ready. Seraphim's tail wagged as he sat on the waterfall. 404 noticed Seraphim and smiled. Here's a challenge for you. I know you can lift boulders and blasters, but show me you can lift Seraphim, 404 said, to which Seraphim turned in confusion. Error looked at 404 in anger. Does it look like I can lift him? Error said, clearly angry. What? Do you want to go back down a lesson then? This will teach you how not only to hold a bigger object, but how to also hold on to its contents as well. I want you to TR dash, but before 404 could finish, Error interrupted him. Yeah, I got it, Error said, in which 404 rolled his eyes and watched as Error attempted to lift Seraphim. Seraphim's body heaved and hooed, but he never did lift off the ground. Error was sweating buckets and couldn't lift him up an inch off the ground. Error then collapsed onto his knees. Damn it. Fuck this, Error said as he sat down on the ground steaming. 404 looked at him and then sat in front of him. You're a horrible student, 404 said, in which Error looked at him in anger. You're so impatient and whiny as well as stupid, 404 said, snickering. What is your fucking point? Error shouted, in which 404 then got serious and stared at him. But you have potential, 404 said, in which Error's face changed from anger to slight shock. Seraphim kicked his legs up as he stared down the waterfall into the endless abyss into the mainframe. You're so much more stronger than you think. I've seen it, and I know you have the ability to so incredible feats. The only thing holding yourself back is you. At some point you're gonna have to do these lessons without me, for I won't always be here to help you, 404 said as he stared off. What do you mean by that? Error said, looking at 404 in confusion. But 404 didn't stare back, he just looked at the endless void into the mainframe. He then opened up a small portal and got some cookies from Epic Tail. Here, have a cookie, it should calm your nerves and help you focus more on your training, 404 said as he then sped up time on the cookie, turning it into a week-old cookie in seconds. Oh, that's better, 404 said as he bit down on it. Error simply looked at 404 as he held his cookie. Won't be here, Error thought to himself. Little plans and big moments. Error then woke up in the white grass of the hideout, where he noticed immediately that 404 and Seraphim were gone. Damn it, did I actual doze off? He said as he opened up his communication channel. This is Error. 404, do you read me? But Error didn't get anything back. Error then sat back down in the grass and looked out towards the endless white abyss past the bridge. So, is this my life now? Just being some puppet to a guy who treats me decently, I guess, he said as he kept picking at the grass. Why is it that I can never beat Ink? Why is it that everyone always likes him more than me? He shouted as he threw up a whole thing of grass. You normally talk to yourself? Said a voice behind Error, in which he turned to see it was 404 and Seraphim who had returned. Error got up quickly and brushed off his clothes. Hey, I'm sorry I dash, but before Error could finish, it's fine, come on, 404 said as he walked to the bridge with Error following close behind him. You know I don't judge you for that, right? 404 said. Who? Error looked at 404 confused. Oh, what that back there? It was nothing, just some Error couldn't finish his words. It's good to let loose yak now. Not a lot of people get to live their lives expressing themselves and often die with stuff bottled up. 404 said as he leaned on the bridge looking outward. Error stared at him for a bit. It felt odd. It was odd that this guy was so normal for being a glitch, much less a Error, and yet somehow he keeps himself composed and completely mature in every situation. Maybe he should be more like him. Did Error choked on his words, afraid of what he was gonna say. Did you die that way with regrets? I mean, Error said with slight regret. 404's face turned into a slight sorrow as his facade began to crack ever so slightly, only for him to mend it back and fix his figure. Yes, I had a lot of things that needed to be said, 404 said as he tried to keep his hands from shaking. Error noticed, but pretended he didn't. Error then leaned against the bridge. Oswell. He looked to 404 and then outwards again. So what's the plan? You usually have one by now, Error asked. We need to wait for the protectors to calm down and relax a bit until we can move. If you're asking for the actual plan, then it's this. You and me are going to head out to go shopping. I believe I may have a great idea, but I need to be sure on who I pick for this task, 404 said as he dug in his pocket. When did we need a mascot? I thought we were all about secrecy and shit, Error said, scratching his nose. We don't need a mascot here, 404 said as he handed Error a strange orb. Wait, is this? Error said, analyzing the orb. Yep, it's one of Abyss's orbs from his shitty little pocket dimension. 404 bit into a stale cookie. I snagged it for you. It replays events from any you want. I thought it'd give you something to do while I run errands without you sometimes, 404 said as he sat on the floor of the bridge and began to doze off. Error looked at it confused. And sombreros, but why did you? Error decided not to finish his sentence and just stared at it. Wake me up in 3 hours, would ya? 404 asked as he fell asleep. Yes, sir, Error said as he looked at the orb. The orb then showed the aftertail and showed Gino, Classic and Papyrus all laughing together. A few drops of water landed on the orb as the events replayed for Error once again. I can't wait to be king. Somewhere in the multiverse, Bill. Sans was chilling around thinking about the next fiasco he'd get the chance to get caught up in when suddenly Abyss and his team arrived in the distance. I don't like this, Abyss. He worked with that guy in Dreamtale. How can we possibly trust him? Asked Delta. Sans, as the others nodded in agreement. We can't allow 404 to keep doing what he wants and getting resources from other assets in the multiverse. We need to cut off his contact with outsiders, Abyss said with anger as he marched towards Bill. Sans, what makes you think that Rouge will listen to you, Abyss? Shouted Mecha. Sans as they walked to him. Bill opened his eyes and looked at Abyss as he approached him. Well, what's this? The mighty protectors come down from their mighty towers to visit such a lowly creature such as myself, Bill? Sans said as he bowed to the protectors sarcastically. Don't play with me, clown. I have a request to demand. Even Abyss said in anger at Bill. I need you to tell me what the hell is 404's next move, so that I may cut him off before he gets the chance to cause more chaos, Abyss said. Hee ha 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 ha. Bill! Sans laughed out loud in the faces of the protectors. What's so funny, demon? Shouted Mecha. Sans as he got ready to aim his weapon at Bill. Oh, it's just funny how you all can stop people that would prove a issue to even small people like Blue, but somehow you're losing yourselves at the slightest sign of actual effort, Bill. Sans said, snickering, only for Abyss to grab him by his bow and pull Bill close in an attempt to intimidate him. Look, I don't have time for your sadistic games. Demon 404 is out there hurting people and doing whatever he wants, and I know he must have told you what he has planned, Abyss said. Oh, he did. But he made me deal that I wouldn't tell anyone, Bill said, smiling a wicked smile. He threw Bill to the side. Damn it. Abyss said as he was clearly upset. What? No. Delta? Sans asked. We get ink, Abyss said. Oh yeah, there's a real hero for you, Bill. Sans said, smiling and fixing his tie-tige. Come on guys, let's go, Abyss said as everyone walked away and teleported. Bill smiled to himself as he floated in place, chuckling to himself. You were right 404. They really are stupid and gullible, Bill, Sans said to himself. Back at HQ with 404, Error and C.Seraphim. For 04 and Error were going over some of 404's notes. 404 read them as Error made weapons out his strings such as spears and large string hands. So run the plan by me if you don't mind. You know, since you like never telling me what's going on, Error said as he untangled his strings. Well, that's because a good plan is only good as the person who makes it, and if I'm not doing good then neither is the plan. Here it is perfect, 404 said as he closed his holographic notepad. Error then jumped off the bridge and walked over. So what did you come up with to get those stupid squares off our backs? Error said, kicking up grass. Look out into the multiverse, Error 404 then opened a large portal showing all events going on in the multiverse. C.Seraphim even came over to look at it all the worlds, all the characters and all the disorder. 404 said with a cold tone in which Error just stared at the portal, and 404. All those worlds and people all living as if their lives were on the line, all because they want to be recognized and loved by the so-called creators. All they want to be is appreciated, so they go out of their way and hurt others in exchange for some attention. That's why there are killers and outcodes, because people are selfish and determined to earn some way to get themselves out of here and up there, 404 said. And what's here? Error asked with slight curiosity, but with a hint of awareness to what the answer could be. This dung heap, boy, 404 said. I thought I told you to stop calling me that, Error said, annoyed. Don't get defensive about it again, you sound like a child, just like those US grabbing for attention, 404 said as he looked through the portal. Error looked at him and then to the portal as it flashed through many worlds, even Aftertale, which caught his eye for a brief second. 404 noticed, but didn't pay it any mind as he continued. Which is why they need someone in charge to keep them all in line and to make sure there is order in this world as we do our job, 404 said as he closed the portal. Error then heard what he said and reacted. Wait, you plan to turn the multiverse into a monarchy? Error shouted in shock and clear confusion. Yes, with one man at the forefront of it all. 404 said, fixing his jacket and walking to the bridge. But how could you possibly pull that sort of thing off? I mean, I don't want to be king, and you can't be king, you need to be a secret, right? Error said, searching for an answer out of 404. You're correct. Which is why it won't be either of us, it'll be an asset from a different 404 said. Someone who isn't well known to anyone, and all while being a great asset to out plans, 404 said. But how do we know that this guy will listen to us? Error asked. I'll have him under my control the whole time. That way he doesn't get any ideas, 404 said. So what makes you think that the AUS will listen, much less bow down to someone they don't know or respect? Error asked. If those options aren't acceptable, then the best way to rule then is through fear. My mother taught me that. That's how she ruled over the underground, 404 said with bated breath clinging to his chest as it caused him pain to reflect on the past. Error looked at him and understood what he was going through, and so moved it back to the discussion at hand. Well then, how will do that then? Error asked, trying to lift some tension. 404 breathed. Well, I plan to give him some of my code, that way he will have the power to challenge anyone who dares to question. Defeating a few worthless naysayers should help with silencing the masses, 404 said as he looked at his hand. Wait, what? You could have gave me some of your code this whole time? I could have been crushing ink in ever confrontation, but instead I'm stuck here training like some oaf. You've been holding out on me. Error said, angrier than ever. 404 looked at him with a cold expression and with a hint of disappointment. So that's how it is, who, the moment a shortcut is provided you take it. What about all the hard work you've done so far? You're just going to throw it away. You're a disappointment, boy, 404 said with a cold tone. Who the HL dash? But Error was interrupted as 404 kept talking. Every time I think you've made progress and grown somewhat as a person, you always take 2 steps back like any child. Only issue it that children learn and you don't, 404 said as Error just got more angry and upset at his words, which struck like knives. You have the potential to do great and outstanding things if you just put your mind to it, you know. Though as you are, I doubt you'd get anywhere. I once believed that you could be a successor to me if I were to ever fail or our mission were to be complete, 404 said as he stared at Error with disappointment. Now I'm not so sure anymore. A child should never sit in the same seat as a god, 404 said as he began to walk away, only for a bone to strike him in the head, sending him toppling over and falling on his face. 404 clenched at the grow, digging his fingers into the grass as he was reminded of how he was treated as he was young. He then looked back at 404 with a killer expression of anger and shock. Error looked at 404 with uncapped anger as he then shouted his response. You think you're so goddamn high and mighty 'cause you're some kind of god who Well, I'm a damn destroyed, you old bastard, and I'm tired of you talking down to me and telling me how good or bad I am. How about we figure out just how good I am by seeing how bad I can kick your ass? Error shouted as he got ready to battle. 404 looked at him with anger and then cooled off his expression to a icy cold look. Alright then, I guess it is time for another lesson, 404 said as he stood up and dusted off his clothes, getting ready. Come boy, 404 said. Student versus master. We often are with people for so long. We forget what it's like to be alone until we are. Error 404. 404 lifted Error up into the sky with his blue mastery, and then threw him back down to the ground with a large thud, causing Error to struggle to stand. Look at that, just one attack and you're down. Absolutely pathetic, 404 said with a smirk, only to see Error stand up. Why? Why won't you shut up? Error shouted as he used his strings to pull Red Bones out the ground, and began to spin around, causing Red Tornado, where Bones shot out of it, aiming for 404, who dodged them perfectly. Error then shot out large red bones covered in smaller ones. 404 jumped to it and flew through the horde of smaller bones, lining only for him to destroy it with a dark blaster as soon as he jumped off it again. He then turned around to the tornado and used his blue mastery to slice it in half with a air slice, exposing Error. 404 summoned a dark blaster above Error, and then aimed it to ram into Error from above, causing him to hit the ground with a boom. The multiverse won't ever take you seriously as you are. I'm making you better, making you into a true destroyer, the one your creator always wanted you to be, 404 said. Shut up. Error yelled as he threw more bones at 404, only for 404 to fire a small dark blaster, destroying the bones and sending Error flying back, hitting the back of HQ. You're so impatient and ill-minded. Your best qualities are lost due to that mouth of yours, 404 said as he fired 10 more blasters at Error, who hoped on his own blaster and dogged the coming attack. Error then uprooted strings from under 404 and wrapped them around him. Impressive, 404 muttered as Error began to fling and drag 404 until finally slamming him into the bridge, destroying it. Asterisk, a large dust cloud formed from the wreckage of the bridge. Error watched as he landed back on the ground. Error wiped the blood from his nose and looked around for 404 to see if he had teleported elsewhere. Asterisk. You see, that was good. It's too bad I have to get you pissed off to give me such good results, 404 said. Error looked back at the smoke and saw 404 fly up from the smoke and then shoot towards him. 404 flew towards Error and grabbed his scarf and then continued to fly past him, dragging him against the ground, only stopping to slam him against the ground as if he were nothing, with a loud thud, and then do it again with a large crack, and then to toss Error away, sending him flying backwards. 404 watched Error fall to the ground and then noticed he had Error's scarf in his hand. He then threw it to the side and watched Error struggle to get up again. Ivy taught you better than that, 404 said as Error began to rush over towards him, only for 404 to use his blue mastery to trip him, causing him to fall on his face. Look at you, pathetic, you can't harm me, 404 said, crossing his arms. I'll knock that shitting eating grin off your fucking face. Error shouted as he ran straight to 404 and punched him in the face, landing making loud bang with his fist on impact. 404 looked in shock as the two began to glitch out completely, but it didn't matter to Error as he kept punching 404 in the face blow for blow, until he finally, when the glitching became too much, he wrapped his hands in loads of strings and gave 404 a large sucker punch, breaking his nose and sending him flying backwards, skidding across the white grass and tattering his clothes. 404 got up from the ground slowly, and then felt something on his face. He then wiped it away as he saw his blood from his broken nose, and then looked at Error with smile, only for Error to summon a sharp bone from the sky and throw it at 404, in which he blocked with his hand, causing the tip of the bone to go through it. Asterisk breathes asterisk, that's it boy, 404 muttered to himself as he then dodged more bones coming his way. 404 uncrossed his arms and then began to dodge forward, getting closer to Error, in which Error began to move backwards and throw more blast and bones until a blast hit 404, and some bones struck him, sending him flying backwards again. Error then wrapped his hands in strings again as he teleported to 404 and punched him in the face again, only this time 404 didn't recoil from the hit. Error looked shocked. See what happens when you shut up, 404 said as he brushed Error's hand away. He then moved his hand towards Error's head and flicked him with his middle finger, sending him crashing against the far wall behind him at the back of HQ. 404 then went flying towards Error at Incredible, in which Error then jumped over 404, dodging him, and then wrapping him in strings and slamming him into the ground. Asterisk 404 hit the ground head first. Error then landed on the ground and wrapped his foot in strings, and then kicked 404 in the back, sending him tumbling backwards. Error then ran towards, but only 404, to use his blue mastery and untangle the strings around Error's foot. He then wrapped the strings around his hand, turning them black. He then wrapped Error in the black strings and lifted him into the air. He then spun him around until finally slamming him into the bridges. Remains asterisk. Don't go dying just yet. 404 shouted with a smile on his face. You never were funny. Error shouted back as a large blaster shot towards 404, only for him to roll out of the way. 404 then fired some blast at the rubble as Error ran away from the blast, and used his strings to pull some debris with him, throwing it at 404, only for him to use God Rays to destroy the coming rocks. How would you like to die, boy? 404 shouted as he used blue mastery to life Error and throw him to the ground with a large boom, only for Error afterwards to use his strings to wrap around 404. Error then pulled himself towards 404 and slammed his feet into 404's face, sending 404 flying backwards. Error looked as 404 got up with ease again. Just die already. Error shouted, you need to enjoy this a bit more. 404 said, you need to shut up and die. Error shouted as 30 blasters fired at 404, lighting up HQ like a star. Error blocked the light from his eyes as the wind from the attack pushed him back, but once it was done he saw 404 standing there still with his clothes completely torn up, and his jacket just about turned to ashes. Error breathed heavily as he stared down 404. Is that all? I'm just getting started, 404 said, smirking and chuckling to himself. Error got ready for his next attack, when suddenly some large debris came from the bridge and shot towards 404 at light speed, hitting him in the head and knocking him completely unconscious. As much as I would love to stay here, put up with your temper tantrum, I have plans that need to be done. But damn, when did you start learning to aim? Hee. 404 said as he sat down next to Error's unconscious body. Well, I think that lesson went well, 404 said as he opened a portal from Epic Tale and grabbed a box of cookies and began to eat them. It only gets worse from here. 8 months later, after their battle, the two just about parted ways till circumstances brought them together again. The Abyss team and Star Sances were hot on Error's trail, and without 404 he would certainly be caught. With no other choice, the two had to reunite and guard one another's back. After the experience, 404 then decides to commence with his previous plan and create the King of the Multiverse. They embark on their way to an known as Photonegative Tale, and that is where the story begins again. This is stupid. Why are we sneaking around? We should just go in there. Take him. Error. Sans said annoyingly as he and 404 sat inside of the Liberty. Patience, boy. How will you ever succeed at anything if you're so quick to finish the job? 404 said as he used some binoculars to look outside at Photo, Sans and Papyrus chatting with the human Russia. We've been dash, but Error would then see 404's face staring at him in a cold and slightly annoyed look. Error then shook his head and breathed, forgive me. But how are we getting anywhere by just stalking them? And not to mention the Abyss team and Ink's annoying posse could be on our throats at any second, Error said with worry, only to see 404 grab his cup of tea and take a sip of it. There is no glory without strategy and no victory without sacrifice, and right now time is ours, 404 said as he kept watching. Error simply watched as he rolled his eyes at 404's more cryptic crap. Just then Error saw his Photo, Sans and Papyrus separate, and Sans walks towards their house. Error then looks at 404, who then looks to him, and the two teleport out of the cafe. Photo. Sans entered the house and closed the door behind him, only to then get wrapped up by Error's strings and hung by the ceiling. What the hell? Photo shouted as he looked down to see Error standing under him, chuckling as 404 walked out of the kitchen and ate a chocolate kiss or two. We got him, sir. Now what? Error said as 404 ate the last chocolate kiss and looked up at Photo. Sans, we'll be taking him back to HQ. And when done, then we can start with making the king. 404 said, much to Photo's confusion. Error shrugged at the edgy way it sounded, only for him to hear a portal open outside. Error looked out the window and saw no one. He kept looking around until he could see someone. See anything good? said a voice next to him, startling Error and causing him to stumble back. He then got a good look only to see it was Bill. Sans you, Error shouted, getting 404's attention. Oh Bill, and what kind of vist is this one? 404 said as he walked over with Error, looking at Bill with caution. What, can't I be here just to pay you visit, ol' friend? Bill, Sans said with a large smirk. We don't want anything to do with you, demon, Error said as he got ready to attack Bill. Sans, silence boy, I'm not here for you, I'm here for your master Bill, Sans said as he looked towards 404, who wasn't paying any attention to him. You don't have anything I want, 404 replied to him. Oh, you're gonna like this one, Bill, Sans said as he wrapped his arm around 404's shoulder, and the two walked to the kitchen. Error looked at them with concern. Let me go, Photo shouted, only for Error to look at him and wrap his strings around his mouth. Hey look buddy, I know you and I have had a few bad deals and all, but I hope we can move past that and start a new relationship, one built on deals and sacrifices. Bill, Sans said as he smiled and looked through the kitchen fridge with 404 still saying nothing. So you and the kid working together again? After your last spat I was thinking you two wouldn't even call each other anymore. Ring ring Bill, Sans said as he got a banana from the fridge and used it as a fake phone. I don't have time for your games, Bill. What information do you have? 404 asked, in which Bill. Sans began to eat the banana as he sat on his cane. Well, that would imply being a free service, and I ain't no charity case, buddy bear. But since you and the young flesh are back into your little scheming again, I suppose I can give you a freebie, but only if I get to hang around your HQ more often from now on, Bill, Sans said as he threw the banana peel away into the garbage. Fine then, whatever sort of information you have better be good, demon, 404 replied. But then 404. For a split second thought he saw Adam standing behind Bill. Sans. 404 rubbed his eyes and took a step back. Bill turned around and looked back at him. You alright, Blue? Bill said jokingly. Why, I'm fine, go on, 404 said as Bill. Sans fixed his tie. Well then, I'd think you'd be happy to know that the Abyss team is here and looking for you. But that's not all, they have a secret weapon they have just for you. It's not finished yet, but when it is you'll know you're in for it. He'll. Sans said as 404 thought to himself, a new weapon? And how do they always seem to be where we are? I need to figure out what this demon's game is. 404 thought to himself as Bill looked through the fridge. Thank you, Bill, your information is as useful as ever, 404 said as he walked out of the kitchen. So what will you do now then? Bill asked. I'm going to make things difficult for our friends, 404 said as he walked out of the kitchen. Marked for execution. As 404 exited the house, he soon was bombarded with bones and blast all around him, sending snow and smoke into the air. Did we get him? Mecha, Sans said as he scanned for 404's presence, only to then be met with a tap on his shoulder. What the? Mecha. Sans turned around to see 404 behind him. Die now, 404 said as he used Blue Mastery and flung Mecha Sans all the way through the mountain, sending off a giant shockwave where the hole in the ceiling would begin. You bastard! Shouted V. Sans as he rushed him, only for 404 to grab him by his neck and then throw him into the snow with ease, which is when 404 would notice a floating camera in the distance. What is that? 404 thought to himself, only to then dodge Abyss's chains and bones. Good job, 404, I am impressed, said Abyss as he flew high above 404, who stood below him. I thought our last bout back in Swapfell would have taught you to keep your nose out of my business, short stack, said 404 sarcastically, angering Abyss. And let you ruin the multiverse for your own sick game? I don't think so, Abyss shouted as he then looked towards the camera-like device and back to 404. But I give you props for making us chase you this far and making us work so hard. But this is where your games end, Abyss said as he landed, and then fired his chains at 404. 404 teleported away, dodging every attack, and then using Blue Mastery to throw Abyss around. You're a fool, you should stayed away, or better commit suicide, 404 smirked as he then used Blue Mastery to rip off one of Abyss's arms and then fling him away. He then looked towards the floating camera again, only to then almost get stabbed by one of Abyss's chains once again before snatching it out of mid-air. Hey really? 404 then pulled on the chain, slamming Abyss into a nearby home, causing a large crash and boom. You bastard! You'll pay for all the lives you've ended, shouted Mecha Sans as used his rocket boots to shoot towards 404 only for him to then smash him to the ground with a loud boom and crack sound. Pathetic, 404 said as his eye once again fell to the camera watching him in the distance. Sir, I got him ready. Shall we go now or are you gonna waste more of our time with these idiots? Error said standing far behind 404 with photo negative. Sans being suspended by strings and magic. No, we're done, 404 said as he walked to Error. Where's Bill? 404 asked only for to Error to tell him he had left a while ago, much to 404's pleasure having him gone. 404 then looked back and used his blue mastery to grab the floating camera. He held it in his hands for a moment, and while he held it he got a quick flashback to his past and to his mother. 404 winced away for a moment, pinching the bridge of his nose as the hallucinations went away. Why? Why are you doing this? Abyss said in pain as he held the stub where his right arm used to be. Why do you gotta hurt everyone around you? Why you gotta destroy worlds that have done nothing to you? Who? Answer me. Abyss screamed as blood gushed out his arm. But 404 only stared at the camera, and for a brief moment before Abyss passed out from blood loss he saw 404 make eye contact with him. Error simply watched as Abyss fell to the ground, as his head laid in the snow and made fit place for itself. We should kill him now that he's out for the count, Error said as he got some of his strings. No, we're leaving, 404 said as he began to walk away, opening up a portal. I don't understand you. First you complain about them being a problem, and once you dispatch of them and have them all down for the count you just walk away? Are you senile, old man? Or just fucking stupid? Error shouted in anger as errors filled his eyes. Watch your tone, boy, 404 said as he turned to him, causing Error to look away, unable to keep eye contact. Besides, what fun would it be if I was to get rid of them now? 404 chuckled to himself. That's when Error finally realized. It was as if for the first time he too began to realize how sick 404 truly was. Now come, we have a multiverse to conquer, 404 said as he and Error to photo negative Sans with them and left Theo, leaving the Abyss team alone. Unexpected connections and unexpected results. Once 404 and Error got back to their base, 404 threw photo negative Sans to the ground. Careful, we just got him here. Hate for him to die, Error said as he then walked over to the mainframe pool. Don't worry, once I'm finished with him, 404 said as he walked towards photo negative Sans. Are you doing this? Come on, pal, I'm sure you and I can have some shared dialogue or maybe reach an understanding somehow. I'm sure at some point you were better than this. Right? Photo negative Sans said only for 404 to lift him up into the air with blue mastery. Silence. You're giving me a headache, 404 said as he then looked at his finger and chipped off a piece of his bone from it. It all starts with this, 404 said as he then moved that piece and stuck it in Photo's pocket before hovering him over the mainframe pool. Hey. We just spent all this week looking and trying to get his ass. What's the point in risking that the mainframe won't take him? Error shouted, in which 404 just simply stared at him with little concern or care. Well, whatever happens, 404 said calmly before dropping Photo Sans into the mainframe pool. Photo screamed as he was taken over by the code and the mainframe entirely, and once he finally drowned in the pool it became solid. Okay, now what? Error asked as he just laid on the bridge railing and watched the mainframe pool with 404 who was standing over it looking down at the darkness of it all. Wait. 404 replied as the two just watched. Soon though things got boring and the two began to goof off. Hey, do you like anime? Error asked while he knitted a hat with the number 4 and E on it. I used to. I don't even know if it's the same as it was when I was growing up, 404 said as he looked back at Error, who was simply staring at him with yet another annoyed look. Can't you ever answer without being so melancholy? Error said with annoyance in his voice, to which 404 smirked and looked away off the cliff and into the white void of the place they called home. 4 hours later. Do you believe in God? 404 asked as him and Error sat on the bridge. Are you narcissistic or something? Error replied, no. I'm asking if you believe in some kind of higher power above us, above me? 404 asked again. This time Error took his time as he held his knitted hat. As they both stood there, the small grass of the place they called home moved slightly, catching 404's attention. He wasn't sure why it did, but for a moment he took that in, if not just for a moment. I don't know, I think if God exists then it's nothing like we picture him, and that if he doesn't exist then we should be grateful. I don't know about you, But I'd hate to have someone who could control my every move and expected outcome, Error said exhaustedly. What about you? Error asked as he looked over to 404 who just stared in front of him for a long moment. There he goes again. Always asking and never answering, it's too morbid for me, Error thought to himself as he stared at his knitted hat. 404 then got up and began to walk off the bridge. You going again? Error asked. Yup, 404 replied. What is it that you do anyway that's so damn important that you go there every day? Error asked. 404 stopped and looked back at him. Hey, you have outer tail. Let me have my own place I can go retreat to, 404 replied as he kept walking off. You still didn't answer my question. Error shouted only for 404 to wave back at him, and then teleport away. Error stood there watching as he left and went away. Seraphim then arrived back and sat down on the edge of the cliff waiting for his next orders. Where is 404? Seraphim asked. Shut up and leave me alone, anomaly, Error said as he tossed the hat off the bridge and began to walk over to the other side of the cliff and sit down. Off in the Omega Timeline Core. Frisk was taking care of some of the new arrivals. Thank you so much for your hospitality, sweet child, said a random Toriel as Core nodded in response, giving them a smile. They then looked over to an empty spot in the Omega Timeline. I hope you're doing okay out there, Beat, Core said as they held onto their sweater. Just then some commotion began to ring through the place, and without thinking Core looked back and saw some of the residents attacking each other as Core ran over. They then saw the two troublemakers get slammed to the ground by blue magic. Core stopped and smiled. You know, I should have figured you would stop by, Core said as their smile widened and saw 404 behind them holding the two down with his magic William. Core smiled, and for a brief moment 404 saw his old lover in place of Core. Frisk. He shook away the hallucination and just smiled back. Oh shit, said one of the troublemakers as 404 and then dropped them onto the ground and they ran off. Damn kids, 404 said with annoyance in his voice. I'm glad you came back, Core said with joy as they then hugged 404 who just stood there looking down and at people watching them. I was afraid I scared you off with my little talk before, Core said in a joking manner. Huh? Please Frisk, you couldn't scare me away if you tried, 404 said as the two then began to walk around the Omega Timeline. It's been a long time, tell me, what have you been up to? Core asked with anticipation. Nothing crazy. Just did a little shopping and came to visit a friend is all, 404 replied as the two continued to hang out. Usurp the throne. As 404 made his way back to HQ, he saw Error and Seraphim. Sans were gone. My gosh, can't I leave anyone here for a couple moments? 404 said, annoyed as he looked around, and then saw the mainframe liquid begin to form, and in congest. Looks like he's ready, 404 said as he then looked towards the bridge. I suppose I'm starting without you then, 404 said as they began to use his blue mastery to lift photonegative out of the mainframe pool. However, a lot of resistance began to occur, stopping him from pulling him out. Damn it. Come on. Budge, you bastard, 404 shouted as he used more of his strength to get photonegative out of the pool. Luckily results began to show, and as he began to pull photonegative out, 404 caught a small glimpse of a red eye staring back at him from the mainframe pool. 404 got photonegative out of the pool, and threw him onto the ground. 404 sat down exhausted as he turned to see the mainframe clawing for him, and now photonegative too. Been nearly a century and I still know nothing about you. Damn it all, 404 said as he then looked towards photonegative. He then saw that he was now black and white, his clothes completely disintegrated and skeleton still intact thankfully. 404 then got up, and began to scan photonegative's vitals and code. At least now that Error and Seraphim are gone I can finally have some peace and quiet while I work on getting my responses and controls into him, 404 said as the wind of HQ blew against him, and he completely gave into the silence of the world around him. Well, don't we look like shit? Shouted Bill Sans from the bridge behind 404, much to 404's displeasure. How you been, man? Haven't seen you in a while, Bill Sans said as he floated over towards 404, to which remained silent the whole time. Oh, you looking kinda pissed off. Hate to be the guy who upsets you, who? Bill Sans said with a wide grin on his face before seeing the person on the ground. Oh shit, you killing people now, Blue? Well, I mean, you always killed people, but I mean now you're killing people yourself? And I don't mean to say you're not killing people yourself, but before Bill Sans could finish, his 404 stared at him with a cold stare. Shut up, 404 said calmly before looking back to photo negative. Oh my bad, guess you're still wetting yourself from before, Bill. Sans said as he then sat on top of Negative's chest swinging his cane around. Hey, did you also see that weird camera thing from before when you were kicking those faggots' asses from before? Don't you think that was weird? I know I do. Oh, what am I talking about? You're never worried about anything. You have it all figured out, right? Bill. Sans giggled to himself as he floated towards 404, who closed his monitor after finishing his analysis over photo negative. You want to know something funny though, Blue? Hey, I just finished reading a whole Urban Dictionary's worth of info on turtles, and guess what? Bill, Sans shouted as 404 then lifted photo negative up and began to walk out through an portal to the ANIT void with Bill close behind. Whatever belligerent answer to this godforsaken you have, I don't want any part of it, 404 said as he then materialized photo negative some clothes. Whoa, you can do that? Bill, Sans shouted completely shocked while 404 then put photo negative upright. Now all I need is error, and we can get this started, 404 said as he then opened up his graphic pad and began to message error. So are we just gonna gloss over the fact you can create clothes now? Can you make me a scarf? Some stockings? Bill, Sans said only for 404 to stop and look at him with concern. Why? 404 asked with complete confusion and surprise and disgust all at the same time. What, I have kinks, Bill? Sans said only to then see Seraphim. Sans teleport onto the scene. Seraphim looked down at Bill. Sans and pointed his tail directly at his head. Jester, Seraphim said. Nice to see you too, big guy, Bill. Sans said as he then looked to 404, who stared back only to turn back to photo negative. If you're here then that means dash. But before Bill Sans can finishes, he was then wrapped up in strings. Exhales this again? Bill. Sans smirked as he looked up towards error descending from a blaster his attention, then going to 404, who was looking at high too. Apologies, sir, for my absence. I was checking up on Nightmare. You mentioned that you hadn't heard from him in 2 days, so I thought I'd do you a favor. Error said as he then dropped down and noticed photo negative. Nice Oreo, boss, so what now? Error asked. Well, now we dash, but out of nowhere photo negative then woke up and blasted 404 and error away, sending them flying along with Bill, who was still tied up. Where am I? What's going on? You, photo negative shouted as he looked at everyone only to then get slammed into the ground and knocked out instantly by Seraphim, who then looked over to the rest of them on the ground. Error and 404 got up while Bill continued to skewer him on the ground like a worm. Hey Blue, look at me. I'm you when you're alone and helpless, Bill. Sans giggled only for 404 to blast him away into the distance. Thank you, Error said with relief. Don't thank me yet, 404 said as the both walked to photo negative and looked down at him. Now what? We kill him and start over? We could still try having you take leadership over the multiverse, sir. Error said. No, we just need to make him forget. No more memories, no more regrets, no more home to remember. You know what to do and I'll do my part, 404 said, in which Error nodded and teleported away. 404 then lifted photo negative by his head, and then began to use his mind manipulation on him. Forget the past, forget the worries and those you once knew. Only remember who you are now. You are the new king of this multiverse. You are King Multiverse, 404 said. The start of an infection. Somewhere far in the distant stretches of the multiverse in a AU known as Herodily lived something horrible, so tainted by the darkness of this world that it now was the source. Where is Eliza Paps? Horror. Sans asked as he and Papyrus walked inside. I'm not sure, could she perhaps be somewhere down the path? Papyrus said only for horror. Sans to shake his head and then begin walking towards their home. Stupid girl, doesn't she know that it's dangerous out here? No thanks to that thing, horror. Sans said, shaking his head as he kept walking. If she dies to it, that's her problem, not ours, horror. Sans said as he continued his way home. Far away from Snowdin and near the ruins lay the corpse of a skeleton resembling horror. Sans with a small patch on its head. Eliza soon came out of the woods and sat next to the corpse of the skeleton. She looked at it and saw how the body looked. It was damaged. The blue jacket completely torn to hell and a large red slash on its body showing its spine and more. The corpse was completely lifeless. Or was it? Hello again, you seem to have moved from where you were before. Guess that must mean you're taking my advice. I know you don't normally enjoy it when I do this, But there are some really beautiful flowers here and I want to share them with you, Eliza said as she began to put flowers in the crack of the skeleton's head. She kept filling his head with flowers until she couldn't fit any more in there. Now you're beautiful, Eliza said as she stared at the corpse. Beautiful, said the corpse as its head slowly turned towards Eliza, whose face began to beam with glee and joy. You can talk. Eliza screamed with joy as she then hugged the corpse tightly. I always knew I wasn't crazy, she said as her tears fell on the corpse's face. The corpse then used its hands to rip open Eliza's face from her jaw, leaving her mouth looking more like a big hole. Eliza's corpse fell to the ground spazzing with pain and small whimpers until finally dying from the pain. The corpse then got up and stood tall over Eliza's body. It's just not what it used to be, said the corpse as it began to fill Eliza's giant hole with the flowers she gave him. You wouldn't get it, would you, little one? All you think about is the kindness in the world. I lost it all years ago, and now I'm without meaning and purpose. The one I hated most, it most likely dead and long gone, the corpse said when suddenly a large horde of light arrows began to pierce his body. Here I was wondering when I'd get some company, the corpse said as it looked up to see Dream Sans sitting on a branch in far-off tree aiming at him. I don't normally do mission alone, but figured this would be a good chance to get in some much-needed practice. Dream! Sans snickered as he dropped down. So tell me, zombie, you got a name I can call you, or would you rather be nameless? Said Dream as he got another volley of arrows ready to fire at the corpse. Infected suits me just fine, said the corpse as it stared at Dream with empty eyes. Wait. Do you mean? Oh shit, Dream said as his arrows and bows began to shake, looking at the figure in front of him. It can't be. I was told that he had been killed already, Dream thought to himself as Infected turned fully towards him. Infected then looked at Dream with a blank smile. Tell me, Lego boy, what time is it? Infected asked as Dream continued to shake in fear. I don't know. Like 8 a.m.? Dream responded with fear. Is that the actual time? Infected said with confusion as he began to dig in the snow like a dog, with Dream being visibly confused as he watched. What are you doing? Dream asked in complete confusion. Digging, Infected said as he soon dug a rather deep hole into the ground. Is this truly the monster I heard about? Dream said as he then stared into the hole, only for Infected to jump out, grabbing him and pinning him to the ground. Shit, I let my guard down. Dream screamed in his head as Infected kept him pinned to the ground. Now tell me, Dream boy, what's the latest scoop around this fucking hell hole? Infected screamed and laughed as he punched Dream's head into the ground. Why do you want to know something like that? Dream screamed. If you don't start spitting information, you're gonna be spitting blood instead, Infected chuckled. Okay. All I know is I heard word going around about a king above all. Some sort of figurehead that rose up in power and is now claiming himself to be the king of the multiverse, and I swear that's all I know. Dream shirked. Is it? Infected asked. I also practice swears in the mirror. But I never use them cause I'm too scared of hurting people's feelings, Dream said with guilt. Pussy, Infected responded before kicking him in the hole he dug. You're not just gonna leave me in here, are you? Dream said with fear. Oh, not to worry, you'll have some company, Infected said with a large wicked smile as he then tossed Eliza's corpse down into the hole on top of Dream, with his screams of shock and terror filling the hole in air. A king? Weird occupancies. Something smells fishy here, and it's not just my taint either. Seems like this place is getting more interesting. But how do I get the attention of the masses with me being unable to travel the same gates they can? Infected asked himself as he kept hearing Dream scream as he began to walk away towards the ruins. I'm sure I'll find a way, Infected said with a grin as he opened the door to the ruins. Metal God. Somewhere in Mechatale with the Abyss team. Processors online. Scanning all systems for possible errors and viruses. None detected. Continue updating. Process at 30%. Sensors fully functional. As the machine began to open its visor, it saw Abyss and Mecha Sans together in front of it in what looked to be some kind of lab. We need to run more tests if we're going to be let it out, Abyss? Sans said as he looked at the machine and grazed it. I promise you it works perfectly fine. I've done the test myself and everything lines up perfect. Mecha? Sans responded with a tired expression showing exhaustion. Understood. I know we need to stop him and that we can't let him get away, Mecha. Sans said as he then continued his work on the machine. We need to make sure that this thing can take him on evenly, but I was wondering, how on earth do you plan to get that done? Mecha asked as he looked to Abyss. Sans, who was looking outside the lab. Let's just say I have a certain demon already doing some of my dirty work for me. Abyss, Sans said as the fluff of his jacket rose, making him look like a marshmallow with feet, to which Mecha snickered just a bit before working again. Fool is gonna get himself killed hunting this man down. But he has a heart for it. He just wants to be like him so bad, Mecha said as he finished up any and all parts of the machine and getting rid of any viruses. Finally. It's finished, Mecha said as he then backed away and pushed a button, turning the machine completely on. Analyzing. Processing. Uploading 404 databanks and notable knowledge on weaknesses. Loading responsive capabilities. All online. Starting up Mecha 404 XE. 20%. 60%. 100%. Mecha crossed his fingers. Come on, please work, Mecha said, concerned and worried. Suddenly the machine turned on completely and breaking from the chains that held it suspended up before. Core fully operational, mainframe source code recognized. 404 piece and code processing and 404 skill set uploaded and copied, said the machine with a cold and robotic tone. Yes, yes. Now we're talking. Our 404 and error problems are over for good. Once we let you out on the field, you'll be unstoppable. Thanks to all the data collected, we now have his perfect advisory. Now all I need is to run a few tests and we can get you onto your first mission, Mecha said with glee as he went over to a control panel. Now then, damn, a name for you would be nice. What was that program called? Mecha 404. It's a bit unoriginal, but it fits very well, I think. What do you think, Mecha 404? Mecha asked with a curiosity. Analyzing correct response. Exceptional name quality being rated. 56% original. 44% on unoriginality. Mecha 404 responded with Mecha rolling his eyes in annoyance. Never ask a machine anything. Honesty is what they only know, Mecha said sarcastically, as he pressed a button, turning the laboratory into a large battle testing arena. Targets popped out of the ground while flying drones flew around at sound-breaking speeds, and large battle droids walked and moved around in unpredictable patterns. Now Mecha 404, these machines are here to test your capabilities. I want you to run through them. Show me your full power, Mecha said as he pushed a button, turning them all on. He then went through a couple of doors to cut off part of the lab where could watch from a safe distance. Mecha 404 watched him leave before then turning his attention towards all the battle droids and drones flying around and moving about. Mecha 404 then sprinted forward, transforming his right arm into a large cannon and blasting at the drones and droids on the ground. Mecha 404 then got rock thrusters onto his feet and began to fly up towards the drones and crush them in its hands, and then lands on top of two droids, crushing them immediately, and after that he then summoned sharp blue plasma blades out of its wrist and began to tear through the machines, obliterating all in its path. Suddenly a couple of drones in the air grouped up and began to fire at Mecha 404 collectively. Mecha 404 stood not phased and then put both of its arms together, conjoining them. God cannon firing. Mecha 404 spoke, firing a large pure plasma and radiating ball of pure energy out of itself. The large ball of energy shot straight towards the drones and upon impact reduced to no more than atoms of what they were, as the explosion was vertical and shot straight through the O it originated from and ended up destroying another nearby O. After the explosion ended, Mecha 404's body went slightly limp from overheating as it then put more power to its legs to keep itself upright. Holy shit! Mecha said as he ran out and expected everything. That was brilliant, Mecha 404. I'm almost certain that you're 100% capable of that, destroying 404 for good. We just need to run a few tests and Mecha said as he looked up through the large hole in the ceiling of the lab, sky and O itself. Yeah, we're gonna have to work on condensing that blast, and I want you to be way more faster than what you demonstrated, even though I can already tell you're faster than he is. We can't be too sure, can we now? Mecha said as he then began to walk off, studying the damage done to the drones. While he did so, Mecha 404 began to analyze its own progress, assessing, learning and adapting to it could do better and how to perfect what it did well already. Don't worry, Mecha 404, we're gonna figure this out. You will be the strongest thing this multiverse will ever lay eyes on, and once they see how well you can take down that pesky 400, and for then there won't be anything to stop us from taking down Error and many other threats in the multiverse after that. Trust me, this is just the beginning. Mecha smirked as he looked back up through the hole while Mecha 404's light illuminated him. Cookies. Months passed as Error and 404 got King Multiverse up to speed on many things they had already accomplished. In that time Oswell 404 ended up picking up 3 new members to join his ranks. Sinnoh, Cyan and Nightmare all were now part of his team and would now help with missions while 404 and Error handled with more important matters. On the other side of the multiverse, Abyss and his team continued to work on Mecha 404's capabilities and powers, all while they trained themselves for what was to come soon would be a hurricane of everything that has led to this moment now. Sir, are you sure you want to do this now? I mean, in all due respect. But this walking Oreo can hardly defend himself. Error shouted while the others watched with 404 simply standing in front of them, back turned away. Geez, someone should put a muzzle on your ass. You're so damn loud, Sinnoh said with a sarcastic passive-aggressive tone. What was that? Error shouted. This is turning out even better than I thought it would, Heesign giggled as he watched eagerly with King Multiverse remaining near Seraphim the whole time with a worried and yet steady look. Enough all of you, you're just giving me a headache, and Error do learn to shut up. 404 said as he walked past him to everyone else, leaving Error fuming and storming off and sighting down in a patch of white grass, pulling it out to release himself from his anger. Now you all heard the plan, King Multiverse. You will announce yourself as the new king of the multiverse. With that, everyone will gather around and begin to ask questions. You will only answer them if they decide to follow you. But if you get people wanting to fight you, then you'll have Seraphim and Error to help you defend against them. Once they see you have 2 of this multiverse's strongest with you and at your side, they'll hesitate on wanting to fight against you. 404 said as he crossed his arm in waiting. Still can't believe you want me to bow to that freak. But if you honestly think this will work, I suppose I can try out my acting, Error said, surprising everyone. I half expected you to be furious with that idea. 404 said with a smirk. Maybe you don't know me all that well then, old man, Error replied, smirking back at him. Now for the rest of you, I want you all to continue your hunt for him. I don't care how long it takes, don't come back without any progress, 404 said as he swiped his hand over them and they all teleported away, all except Cyan. What are you still doing here? 404 asked with an annoyed tone. Thought maybe these would help you with your tensions, sir. Made them myself, Cyan said as he handed him a box of cookies and then left, leaving 404 and Error confused. I hope you're not honestly contemplating on eating that filth's trash, said Nightmare, who had been leaning against the bridge the whole time in the shadows. It's beneath you to accept suck things, you know, Nightmare said as he walked out towards 404 and Error. Didn't anyone ever tell you that begging looks disguising on you, Nightmare? 'Cause it really does. More so than that constant oil-like goop you have on you all the time, Error smirked, only for Nightmare's tentacles to point towards him. Watch it, filth. I don't ever addressing you, Nightmare said as he looked to 404, who was still eyeing the box of goods. 404 then opened them up as he looked inside and saw the full box of cookies. He stared at them with a confused look at first before grabbing one. Wait, Error said, getting everyone's attention while King Multiverse walked over with Seraphim. It could be poisonous, Error said cautiously. It's a cookie, King Multiverse said.
Don patranisme.
I know what the fuck it is, Error shouted. You're both acting like children. 404 would never put himself in harm's way or even risk the possibility of being poisoned by one of his subordinates, Nightmare said with a wide grin. 404 then ate the cookie. What the hell are you doing? Nightmare and Error both screamed as 404 continued to munch on the cookie. 404's eyes then shrunk as the taste finally settled in. His mouth was filled with an explosion of flavor and delight as he continued to eat another and another and another until there was none left in the box and everyone had lost all their collective shits besides King Multiverse, who didn't seem to care the slightest. Eventually there were no more cookies left. 404 looked under the box for any more, in which everyone then slapped their foreheads beside Error. 404 then brought his control panel and went to his calls and called Bill Sans. Hello there, bestie blues. What is cooking on the menu this wonderful Thursday afternoon? Bill Sans picking up the call. Demon, have you ever heard of Choco Cookies? 404 asked. It's chocolate, sir, Error said, correcting him. Thanks, chocolate cookies, 404 asked again. Yes? Why? You have some or something? Bill Sans asked with a tone of confusion. I have never tasted anything that had such an explosive impact in my inner reaches of body, such as this. The texture, nutrients and everything about it adds up. I was hoping I could ask if you could get me some more of them. 404 requested to everyone's except for Error's surprise. Sure, why not? Hell, I'll even give them to you for free, Bill, Sans said. What's the catch? 404 asked. No catch at all, just the idea of you liking something other than Alphatale for once sounds too good to be true, Bill. Sans snickered as 404 hung up the phone in annoyance. Towards the farther outer reaches of the multiverse, the Abyss team kept on testing Mecha 404's strength as they had him face off against 3 different versions of Seraphim, Sans, and just like towers, each one of them fell in defeat, one being reduced to ashes, the other 2 blasted to near oblivion with Mecha 404's new attack, the Boom Ray. He's almost ready, Abyss said with a wide grin. A new dark age. A month and a half later, it was time for the full plan to finally ensue. 404, Error and King. Multiverse were all ready and prepared as they stood in the anti-void. Now what happens? King, Multiverse asked in curiosity. Now you shut up and listen, whelp, Error said with his arms crossed and in a pissed attitude. Don't mind the boy, now listen up, this is your home now, and you will call me from here using the calling function me and Error use. I gave it a few upgrades, one of them being you will now be able to go on to pretty much speaker mode with it, contacting every being in the multiverse and possibly beyond. Why you would want to contact anyone outside of this place, I don't know. If you have any questions, ask me and me alone. No one else is here to help you. Do you understand? This multiverse is cruel and unpredictable. Everyone here is out for themselves and aren't afraid to rip others down to get what they want. 404 said as Error and King. Multiverse watched. If you require aid, Error will be your loyal servant and aid you in front of the public, but in private he is your superior and you will recognize him as such. 404 said, to which Error looked at him for a moment before facing back to King. Multiverse. What about Ink? He's a wild card. What if he doesn't follow me? King Multiverse asked. Don't worry, that stupid squid likes anything new. He'll follow you eventually, Error said, rolling his eyes. T404 looking at him. 404 then used his blue mastery to grab some of the code he had stored up and began to use his powers on it to create a large throne for King Multiverse with a staircase to the top of it as well. Error rolled his eyes looking at it, and King Multiverse was just stunned at 404's amazing power. Now then, you'll sit there and announce your new position as King of the Multiverse. If you have anyone who comes here looking for a fight, you call in Error and Seraphim. Though with Seraphim I doubt you'll need Error. So I'll just say Seraphim for now. Error you will come in later in the day once there are enough people and announce your siding with King Multiverse. Understood, 404 said and asked with Error giving him a nod and King Multiverse looking at his throne still. Wow, I'm really gonna rule over everything here. Hey, sounds like it could be fun, King Multiverse chuckled. This is a job, it's not supposed to be. If it were fun I wouldn't be here, 404 said as he began to walk away. Now then, if you have any thoughts or even think of betraying me, well, don't, 404 said, smiling back at him with a sadistic smile as he then vanished and teleported to his HQ. As he got there, he then began to see that the mainframe pool had been tampered with. What the hell? 404 said as he kneeled down towards the mainframe pool. You're alive, I know you are. I just wonder what it is that you seek from me. Is the power that I took all those years go? 404 asked himself, as suddenly 2 pairs of black hands grabbed a hold of his neck and began to try to drag him down into the pool. What the hell? 404 shouted as he tried to pull away. Give back what you stole, said a dark voice inside the pool. Hands off, 404 shouted as he fired his dark blaster at the pool, making the hands let go. 404 got a couple feet away from the pool as a dark figure began to emerge from it. He watched as the figure emerged with multiple eyes and a large wide mouth. A freedom message only. Hello? Left set now take what? From you freeing them to now. Why like to it? Sun looks long to will didn't not will owe you your time her here place. Your you pale let key isn't through try. Need you only scattered true at Jacob and find but must one due time find that mother. Here in hell find your you that ago was the you need anything. Won't find hero she see break way for can one you free she's space. Light. Out. You shackles must that the via astral light. The show real soul your Chris. Hello? The real you above become pure with breeze dragon the to red say try I will na her. If lighting, said the large dark figure. 404 was confused as he couldn't understand none of what the figure had said until it began to turn into a familiar shape, shaping itself like a sans, but dark and distorted. "Hello there 404 aka William," said the figure. 404 looked at the figure in shock. His real name hadn't been spoken to him in years. It shocked, scared and filled him with dread. "How do you know my name?" 404 asked, filled with fear. "I know your name cause of these," said the figure as its black disembodied hand levitated up and showed 404 the sight he had been longing to see. Alphatale's code. Jumbled, distorted and tampered with, 404 was completely speechless. "I know you've been searching for these. I've been watching you for a long time, a very long time. Ever since you stuck your dirty hands in the mainframe, nothing has been the same. AUS have been popping up left and right, some not even finished. You rushed the process of AUS all those years ago and now look, this place is a mess and my job of making this mess into something that is recognizable is impossible. Luckily I've been given an out. If I can collect the mainframe code you stole and return, I won't have to worry about these filthy things anymore," said the entity. "Just what are you?" 404 asked. "I am L0 ad 1ing," said the entity. 404 and Loading now faced each other, two figures heads who held the same power. And not too far away in the distant lands of the multiverse, the Abyss team was still training Mecha 404 in his new upgrades and more. It would seem things are getting more interesting. Butterfly. As the announcements from King Multiverse played in the background, Loading and 404 had their battle, Loading and 404 going blow for blow, the two staring each other down, each fighting for something valuable to them, all while the multiverse begins to steer in turmoil. "I will have Alphatale restored," 404 screamed as he fired his dark blasters and used his blue mastery to throw various objects at Loading, who dodged through them and avoided the blasters altogether. "No, I will see it that you and everything you've tainted and touched is eradicated from the history books," Loading replied as he turned 404's blasters back into regular blasters, and then creating a large black orb around 404, trapping him. "You will be destroyed and broken down until nothing left of you exists," Loading said as he then threw the orb towards the mainframe pool. "And don't even think of trying to break free. That is made out of pure dark energy and matter. Nothing is breaking through that," Loading said as he watched the orb with 404 in it fall. 404 began to sweat as he looked at his hands and applied all of his magic and power to them. He then grabbed the black orb he was in. "Then I'll just have to turn it into a matter I can manipulate," 404 said to himself as he then began to concentrate all of his magic around the orb. Loading then began to send more to the orb as it then fell into the mainframe pool. 404 looked at his feet and saw them beginning to deconstruct and break down. "Come on," 404 shouted as he then began to glitch and reconfigure the dark matter and energy around into a tangible and movable matter he could use. "Perfect," 404 said as he then split the orb in half and jumped right out of the mainframe pool, only to then get punched right into the bridge going over it by a giant black hand from Loading. Loading then summoned 8 more and sent towards 404, who began to fly off into the air, dodging and avoiding them. He turned around and used blue mastery to smash 2 of them into each other, creating a large cloud of black dust and smoke. "Fool, you think 'cause I can't see you, I can't sense you," Loading shouted as he looked around for 404. "What is this? Why can't I dash?" But Loading was interrupted by a god ray to the back of the skull from 404, who was hiding behind some rubble. Loading hovered there, paralyzed. "Now here's the deal. I can kill you now and rip those code fragments from your corpse, or I can let you go. You give me the code fragments and we both can walk away," 404 said in an exhausted and semi-kind manner. "You're showing me mercy? After all I've said and done? You really are a fool," Loading said before getting shot in the head with the second god ray shot from 404. "I told you," 404 said as he then walked over to Loading's depleting body and grabbed the fragments of Alphatale. "Finally, after all these years, here you all are. I can stop all this madness and finally just bring you back as in 10-. But before 404 could finish, he was blown back by a large blast, hitting him far back and sending him rolling towards the back wall. "Ha ha ha ha, you really are an idiot," Loading said as he then brought the Alphatale code fragments to him and stared at 404 with a large grin. "You want these so badly? You really want to save that precious O of yours? Well, guess what? Nobody gets what they want in this world. The mainframe isn't kind to those who strive for something more than what they deserve or got. You're better off dying off like the rest of them, Loading said as he then looked at the code and began to crush it. No, wait, stop. 404 screamed as he tried getting up. Or what? You'll kill me, Loading said sarcastically as he continued to crush the code fragments. Please, I'll do anything. 404 screamed, getting on his knees crying, please. I'll give it back, just let them go. Let my family, friends see Chara. Please let them go, 404 whimpered as he looked down with tears swelling up in his eyes. You should have kept your hands out of what wasn't yours, Loading said in a cold tone, looking down at 404. I didn't know. I was just a kid, PL. Please, 404 begged. Well, now you do, Loading said as he then crushed the Alphaverse code fragments into pieces, dumping them into the mainframe pool. 404 looked on in horror as he knew he couldn't dive for them. They were gone. He had lost them all again. 404 looked down at the ground as his soul began to race faster and faster, due to stress and mountain of other negative emotions filling his head, until suddenly 404's body jolted, and he died from his soul being unable to take all of the sorrow his mind was weighing on it. That was anticlimactic. Whatever. What's done is done, Loading said as his hand began to reach out to 404's corpse. But then the mainframe pool began to act up and move sporadically like an email. What the hell? Loading thought to himself as suddenly the mainframe then just jumped out of the hole in the ground and began to latch itself to 404. What the hell is happening? Loading shouted as he flew away from what was happening. He then saw someone teleport into HQ. Hey sir, I was wondering if what the fucking fuck is happening? Error shouted as he saw the mainframe wrapping around 404's body, lifting him up into the air. 404's skull then began to grow weird black veins and his jacket began to become more and more darker, and finally large strange wing-like things began to grow right out of his back with weird blue symbols and eyes on them. Error and Loading made eye contact for a moment before then getting hit with a large shockwave from 404's massive boost in magic and power, his wings blocking out any light that would be coming. He's like a butterfly? Error said with a shaky sense fear in his voice. The battle. Error and Loading teleported out of HQ as they began to flee from Butterfly as it tore through the multiverse like butter, its wings shooting out beams of pure plasma energy cutting straight through their reality, leaving large and deep gaps in the very concept of existence. Holy shit. What the hell is happening? Error screamed as he flew away on his blaster with Loading not far behind. It would appear that somehow the mainframe sees 404 as some sort of part of itself, and when he died in attempt to save what it believes to be itself gave him limitless power and full control over all of reality as we know it, Loading said as he stared back at Butterfly as it began to catch up to them. So how are we alive right now? Error shouted as he was sweating buckets from the pure radiation of power coming from the being behind them. Sheer luck, Loading said as he then turned around and began to spawn things to stop Butterfly. But it did nothing as Butterfly simply just phased through them. Its wings then began to glow as Butterfly then shot forward at light speed, catching Loading its grasp instantaneously. No way! Error and Loading shouted in complete shock, as then Butterfly completely shattered Loading with only his eye remaining in its hand. This is an unfortunate situation, Loading expressed as he looked up at Butterfly as it simply stared down at Loading's eye. Butterfly then began to crush it, only then for Error to shoot Butterfly. However, the blast did not reach as it then just stopped entirely, and just began to orbit Butterfly in a circle until it was fired back at Error, sending him hurling backwards. Such a waste, Loading said as he then shot Butterfly right in the chest, leaving a large hole and sending Butterfly tittering backwards. Loading then sucked out a large sum of the mainframe code out of Butterfly, regenerating himself. Now that's more like, now then where were we? Loading chuckled as he then made hundreds of himself. Without the mainframe supreme code blocking out my abilities, I can go all out if I please. However, I am limited due to the fact I need to keep extracting code from him in order to get stronger. Damn it. Loading said as it sent all 100 of the clones of himself after Butterfly, which just put its hand out stopping the clones, and then turning them onto Loading himself. You've got to be joking, Loading said as he then flew off with the clones following him. Butterfly watched only to then see Error land on the ground beneath him. Old man! Error shouted as Butterfly landed on the ground in front of him, shaking all of reality. Error began to sweat more as Butterfly began to walk towards him, each step shattering more and more reality. I know you're in there, old man, Error said, causing Butterfly to stop. I don't know who that black skeleton is or what he did to you or even what the hell is going on with you now, but I know it's you in there 404. I know you can break your way out of this. You just gonna let all your planning and all of our hard work go to waste so you can throw some temper tantrum? Come on, fight it, old man. Break free. Error shouted only for one of Butterfly's wings to begin to charge up a large ultranova blast. Don't be a fool, brat. Your master is gone. There's nothing there to speak to. Loading shouted as he kept killing his own clones. Error looked up at him and then to Butterfly. Come on, old man. Please, Error said only for Butterfly to fire the blast regardless, blasting a massive hole in reality, leaving nothing but destruction behind it and nothing to exist. Butterfly then looked up and saw Loading killing off his clones. Just as Butterfly was about to fly up towards him, he heard the quivering of Error behind him and the sound of fabric flowing in the wind. Butterfly turned around and saw Error shaking in fear on the ground, and in front of him standing tall was a skeleton wearing a long red cape. Butterfly looked at it before its eyes opened wide from scanning the individual's code. Willpower. The entirety of Reality 6 shook with fierce power as a battle of immense proportion was happening. One that would determine the fate of everyone's existence as they now know it. Loading and Error being the only even comprehending what is going on at the moment, while everyone else was in a state of panic and fear at could or would come. On the far other side of reality, Omni and J404. Butterfly continued their fight with each blast and hit, shaking the foundation of their reality, shattering and breaking the concept of what a battle could ensue. J404. Butterfly continued to fire large and powerful blasts out of his wings that were going at intense speeds, even faster than that of an instant, destroying hundreds of multiverses and hyperverses, as they simply grazed and flew past them, trying to hit Omni, who was moving too fast to properly hit. Stop running around, you little shit. J404. Butterly said as his other four wings began to shoot more large blasts at Omni, who was jumping from hyperverse to hyperverse in order to dodge the attacks. Ares, this foe is unlike anything I've seen before. He's coded and yet he somehow has the ability to use attacks that don't require it. How is that possible? Said a deep voice in Omni's head. I'm unsure, but for now I'm on the defensive until I can figure out how to strike him. His attacks are pretty fast, Omni said as he then hopped over one blast, and then flew off into the air. Well, you better stop messing around before you get yourself caught in one of those attacks. It'll take me months to bring you back from something like that, said the voice. Thanks, Islathorn. Time to put the brakes on this one. Give me 25%, Omni asked as he dodged a wave of blasts from J404. Butterfly. 25%? You think it's that serious? Asked Islathorn. Yeah, this guy isn't messing around. He's giving me massive males grow vibes, and that's not a good thing. So I'm putting an end to this now, Omni replied. Good luck, my friend, Islathorn said as he then gave Omni a massive boost in power. Omni's eyes began to shoot out lightning as Hen then began zip across light itself as he made his way to J404. Butterfly. What the? I can't see him. J404. Butterfly said in a panic as he looked around for Omni. However, it was too late for J404. Butterfly then began to get punched rapidly by an invisible force he couldn't see. Omni then came from the sky and smashed his leg against J404. Butterfly sending him skyrocketing down to the ground. J404. Butterfly got up as he coughed up a spool of blood. His body was beginning to fail him, and not only that, as he looked at his hand he began to see it begin to turn back into 404's regular hand. Son of a bitch. Trying to resist me, are you? Well, it's not happening. I will be free from you even if I have to turn this whole reality to cinders. J404. Butterfly thought to himself as he got up and looked as Omni ran around the place at immeasurable speeds. Come on then. Let's end things. J404. Butterfly said as he then began to power up even more, gaining a total of 9 wings. Let's finish this. Give me everything you got, otherwise I'll destroy this reality, and the next after that. J404. Butterfly shouted with joy as he flew into the sky and attached his wings to every part of reality, and began to suck it dry of its resources and more. Omni then bolted towards J404. Butterfly, the closer he got the slower he became until coming to a complete standstill, forcing him to then teleport away. Damn it, what is going on? Omni said as he kept running around reality looking at J404. Butterfly as he powered up. What's the problem, son? Islathorn asked in confusion. I can't get close to him to get the finishing shot in. He's somehow slowing down time and space, making it impossible for me to get close to him. Omni said as he continued to run. Ares, nothing is impossible for you. Use your will and run through it all. He's going to destroy everything. You must find a way to rush through and end this fight once and for all. Go all in. Islathorn said as his voice echoed in Omni's head.